Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In recent videos, I've talked about podcasts. I've talked about the mics that I use in two different podcasts that I produce. In the last one, I actually talked about the Creating Creators podcast and how we produce that at my home in my office. And today I wanted to share with you the podcast One-on-One with Dr. Brooks. It's actually a podcast that I produce for Shelby County Schools, which is part of my full-time job. And I want to show you sort of our setup and the way that we capture some really cool moments for the school system at large. Check it out. All right, so first of all, let me talk about what you actually see on camera itself. Typically, this podcast is done where Dr. Brooks, our superintendent, is sitting in the main chair. We typically have anywhere from 1 to 3 additional people on the podcast. And the sort of setup we have is we've got these director chairs, which are really nice. They're branded with the school system. And we also have these stools. So the stools, we just wanted to find some small way of holding the microphones. I thought initially about mounting these arms to the chairs themselves, but the chair's design sort of prevented that from being possible. So then I decided on using these stools. I actually had these stools at my house. My wife and I did. Thank you to my wife, Jennifer, for putting up with me taking them out of our house so many times. But anyway, we decided to use these to sort of hold the PSA-1, which are Rode PSA-1 mic arms, which then hold the Shure SM7Bs. So the SM7Bs have these mic cords that go down and actually travel under. I have sort of like a sound blanket on the bottom so that it might help some of the echo that we get in the gyms that we typically shoot in. And so the cords are, they run under there and plug into a Zoom P4 pod track, which is our XLR audio recorder. So, but this is sort of what you see on set. Really proud of the way this looks. Really proud of the way that the mics function. There have been times where we've had up to 4 people on camera, and these mics work pretty well to be able to move them around. And we've actually had the person on the end sort of rotate the mic back and forth to sort of work for that 4th person. So go ahead and talk about what's behind me. You'll actually see in the back of the gym, every gym that we've shot in so far has a basketball goal. And the thought was, since the name of the podcast is One-on-One, and we're sort of playing on the fact that Dr. Brooks loves basketball, is a former collegiate basketball athlete, we thought, why not highlight the goal to sort of bring some focus of that. So I actually have a 300X. It's a Aperture 300X in the background with no diffusion on it whatsoever. It's just got the sort of reflector dish that comes with it, and it's just angled to shoot directly up at the goal. And so that sort of acts as a background light. We have over here on my side, this is a Nan light Pavo tube, and it's just simply a little bit out of frame and gives just this rim light to Dr. Brooks, helps separate his suit from the shadows in the background, gives sort of a pop of separation. Occasionally, I'll put the same kind of light on the other side behind the students that are being interviewed. All right, so let's talk about the key light for this setup. We actually have the Amaran 200X lifted up on a boom pole and just simply boomed out between the cameras and the people on set. It's got a lantern softbox that just sort of helps evenly light the people that are on camera. So that's worked really well. Really proud of the way that the lighting has turned out with this setup. Definitely sandbags are needed for this type of boom lighting. So there's a couple of sandbags on that boom stand. But the good thing is the Amaran 200X, which I've actually talked about in previous videos, the Amaran 200X is actually a really lightweight light. It's pretty compact. I actually use pretty much the same bag that I talk about in my mobile lighting sort of video setup kit. That mobile kit, that same bag I use with pretty much everything in it that it was covered in the mobile kit, except I add the PSA 1s with the mics in that bag as well. You have to sort of stagger them on, one facing one way and one facing the other, and then do that again to make sure the actual foam of the mics don't get squished. But that's sort of what I put all of these in, and it helps me make this a little bit more of a mobile setup. So let's talk about the cameras. We've got camera one. Well, camera one is our wide angle, which is usually a 20 mil lens. The tight shot on Dr. Brooks is usually an 85, and the tighter shot on the guests is the 35 millimeter. Sometimes I'll use the great feature of Sony cameras, especially the A7 III and the A7C, is a feature that allows you to basically turn it into a crop sensor camera, which allows you to punch in 1.7 times. And in video, it still allows you to shoot in 4K. And so I utilize that. I think I'm currently utilizing it on the 20 mil, and oftentimes I use it on the 35 millimeter lens as well, so that those become a little bit tighter focal length, whatever the math would work out to be. And it just keeps a little bit tighter focus on the subject, as well as sort of prevents the light from showing up in the shot. So now let's talk about sort of what's behind the camera. It's actually really similar setup to what I showed with my live streaming setup that I've talked about in previous videos. But I pretty much do everything except, instead of connecting the Ada Mini Pro to the computer, I actually connect it to a hard drive to record to. So let's talk about that real quick. We use the Ada Mini Pro ISO to record the 3 inputs. I actually live switch between each angle, which allows me to then have less processing in post. And then I record the audio into what I referred to earlier as the Zoom P4 pod track. And that actually does multi-track recording, so each individual mic is recorded separately, and therefore I can do some editing in post, as well as it makes it easier to sync things up when I need to, because I can see when one is talking and the other one's not. I monitor the audio using some Sony headphones that I have, over-ear headphones, so that I can just simply tell whether one person's mic is too much or too little, so I can add some gain that way. Speaking of gain, these mics are very quiet mics. They're referred to sometimes as gain-hungry mics, and because of that, I actually use some signal boosters. You can use things like cloud lifters, which I do have some of, but cloud lifters have to have a mic cord into them and a mic cord out. So for the sake of not having so many cords, I actually use the FET heads. And the FET heads are these tiny little stubs of additional gain. I think they add like 25 decibels of clean gain, and so it brings the volume of the Shure SM7Bs up to a more appropriate volume level. So that's about it. Usually I have everything sort of cut up already from the actual switching that I do using the ADA Mini Pro ISO. And then that's recorded to the external hard drive, and it is just a hard drive. I don't use a solid state usually. Although today it looks like I'm having some issues with my recording, so solid states may prevent from ever having those. I occasionally have some issues. I haven't had any recently, but it looks like it's acting up on me now. So, but that's what I use to record this. The only additional thing I do is actually, after we get done with the interviews and question and answer, sort of the actual recording of the podcast, Dr. Brooks and the students sort of walk down the halls talking, and I shoot I shoot B-roll basically of that. And we end the B-roll segment with them walking into the gym, and then I use that for the intro. So I've got the intro sort of timed out already with cuts. I've got graphics that are animated already, and so I just drop in the different clips from them walking around the school. And that's the intro. And Dr. Brooks usually begins each video by looking into the 85 millimeter lens and talking to our audience. He then introduces our guests, at which time I cut to the medium wide shot. They talk back and forth. I'll cut to their angle when they're talking, cut to his angle when he's talking, cut to the wide angle when that seems appropriate. And then at the end, he thanks our guests and then addresses our audience a final time looking into the 85 millimeter, and then sort of signs off. And that's it. That's the podcast. So one-on-one with Dr. Brooks has been a great experience for me to sort of create. And it's been, I think, a great experience for the students and for Dr. Brooks to just have some really great conversations and showcase these students and their accomplishments to our communities. So that's it for me today. If this video was helpful, definitely leave a like. If you enjoy this type of content, I would love it if you would subscribe. If you got anything to add to this conversation, definitely leave a comment, whether you have a question or maybe something that you think, hey, you should try this, or any kind of advice you'd like to leave. I'd love to hear that. And that's it for this one. So look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.